Hello, welcome to Senior Rehab Project, the podcast for the community of rehab clinicians working to advance care for older adults. I'm your host, Tali, and with me there's Erin, and this is the SRP segment. Today's episode is a special for Veterans Day, and we will discuss disability rating, age of death, and cause of death in U.S. veterans with service-connected conditions. This episode is sponsored by the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy. The AGPT works hard to provide us Geri PTs with high-quality content to help us advance our practice. This year's combined sections meeting is a great example of that. The AGPT is offering 3 pre-conference courses in DC before CSM kicks off. This year you can learn about fundamentals of Tai Chi, how to apply a comprehensive approach to successful aging, or how to effectively manage kyphosis. To learn more about these course offerings and how you can sign up, go to geriatricspt.org/SRP.
Hey there, Senior Rehab Podcast listeners. I'm Tali Spaceman.
And I'm Erin Carey.
And this is SR Prerex. Erin, how are you doing?
Tali, I am so great because I'm talking to you, and it's been a while. My move to Washington has settled a bit. I've started my new job. We are 3 time zones away from each other, which is very challenging. I am so happy to be here with you right now.
I am too, and yeah, it's a challenging time, but we're doing this and the audience will forgive us. It's the first time we're trying to do it via the internet.
Through a series of tubes. Yes.
I am not sure this is how the internet works.
It is. Just go with it. Just roll with it.
So today we want to do a special. Veterans Day was last week.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for your service. It's something that we should not take as granted.
I come from a military family. I'm married to an Army captain. Like, veterans are near and dear to my heart.
And I am a veteran as well.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
So we both have a spot for veterans because we do understand both how much they give and how much they sacrifice, and that this is the cost of living in a free country.
Yeah, that is how it works.
Yeah. And with all of that, so we thought to do a special for Veterans Day. A little bit of history. Veterans Day originated as Armistice Day on November 11th, 1919. It was the first anniversary marking the end of World War I.
Wow.
Yeah. And a few years after, it became a national holiday. And only at 54, President Eisenhower changed the name to Veterans Day.
Oh, so it was Armistice Day until 1954?
Yes, because that way you honor those who served in all American wars.
I see. So it's not just World War I veterans, it's all veterans.
Exactly.
Thanks, Eisenhower. Wait, Eisenhower?
Yes, Eisenhower.
Thanks, Eisenhower.
You are welcome.
You are not Eisenhower.
I'm definitely not Eisenhower. Do you want a little bit of facts about veterans? Are
they depressing?
No, not at all. It's just general facts.
Sure, why not? Hit me with them.
At 2016, there were around 20.4 million U.S. veterans, which means about 10% of U.S. adults were veterans. 9.2 million of them are veterans of age 65 and older. And the other end of the spectrum, only 1.6 million were younger than 35.
So it's the older generation more than the younger generation.
Yes, because of the draft in Vietnam and all the people that were drafted to World War II and Korea.
Wow.
Also, 1.6 million are women veterans. 6.7 million are veterans from the Vietnam era. Also, that's a little bit of a sad, somewhere between 50 to 40,000 are homeless veterans.
That's really sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I always see homeless people with their signs that say, like, homeless veteran, please help. And it breaks my heart.
And I thought that New York has a lot of veterans that are homeless, and it's it's still a lot, about 2,500. California has 12,000.
Well, it's sunny there. What do you expect?
Yeah. After that, Florida, and after that, Texas, and only after
Wow.
that, New York.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that leads me to,
With that,
and with that, we would like to discuss today an article named Disability Rating, Age at Death, and Cause of Death in U.S. Veterans with Service-Connected Conditions.
service-connected conditions. That sounds
Mm.
intense. PTSD or like an amputation.
Yes, all of the above. Disabilities that are related to their service. You would be surprised that PTSD was not number one. I'm gonna let you try and guess what was the number one disability connected with service.
COPD because they smoke so much?
No, but it was up there. You're not gonna guess it. Me after after I read the article and then I'm like, oh yeah, that happens in the army.
Oh, good. That
Yeah.
sounds cheery. I can't wait.
It's you're not gonna expect it.
Okay, good. Fibromyalgia. I win.
Yeah, trigger finger. It was published in March 2018 in Military Medicine. Also, it is free.
I love it.
It was by Charles Maryland et al. And I'm not going to go over the whole article. I recommend reading it. As I said, it's free. I'm only
It'll
going
be
to
in the
go.
show notes, right?
Yeah, it will be.
Solid.
I am only going to go over some of the highlights and things that I think are either important or interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So the objective of this study was to compare the age at death, military service, and disability characteristic, including disability rating and cause of death by year of birth. So it sounds a little complicated.
Yeah, no, but it makes sense. Everything about that seems reasonable.
Yeah. Also, after they got the results, they examined the cause of death for specific service-connected conditions. But it means that, let's say that if you had cardiovascular disease that it was related to your service, did you necessarily die from it?
Okay, I see.
So they took information from two databases. One was the VetsNet, which is a snapshot of selected items from the VBA, which is the Veterans Benefits Administration, and information from the NDI, which is the National Death Index for veterans, which is part of the VA suicide data repository.
Oh, suicide. Is it depression? I didn't want to guess depression. Okay, good. Well.
No, it's not. It's not.
Okay.
Yeah. Information from VetsNet was military service characteristics, which was branch of service and military rank, and types of disability, which was combined disability rating and individual disability codes. So we had the code for the disability and what was the percent of disability.
Okay, so it's kind of like diagnosis codes. Is it sleep apnea?
No,
Oh.
it's not sleep apnea.
Okay.
From NDI, they got the age at death, sex, and underlying cause of death. So they took veterans that died between the year 2004 and the year 2014.
Okay, so 10 years of data.
10 years of data, okay, and after a combination of NDI and the VetsNet, they got 605,493 people.
Whoa! That's a monster data set. How cool!
Yeah. They didn't get a match for everybody, between the two systems. For example, the match rating at 2,000 people that were too close to 2004 was 72%, but people that were more close to 2014 was 85% match.
Wait, match? What do you mean by...
Between did they find the same person both on NDI and VetsNet?
I see. So 70 whatever percent of people who were in 2004 and one of them were in 2004 and the other. That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So they took those people and constructed age categories corresponding to period of service. They had oldest, middle, and youngest. Birth year of 1938 and earlier corresponded with Korea War and World War II.
Okay.
And they
that
were
makes
the
sense.
oldest. We're talking about people that are over 80. Birth year of 1939 to 1957, which means people that are 61 to 79 were more in the Vietnam era, which was considered middle. And birth year of 1958 and later, which are people that are less than 60, were the post-Vietnam, Gulf War, and more recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay, that actually divvies it up quite nicely, I think.
Quite nicely. My only little problem is that the younger people are younger than 60, which is a little bit of too much of a group. There's a difference in behavior between people that are more post-Vietnam to people that are more Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan conflicts.
Yeah, but I mean the sort of environments that the younger people, so the cohort of people that, or the younger ones, were like going to very similar places, and like Vietnam was so strange as far as our wars were concerned. Like I'm glad that that's separate from the rest of them.
It was definitely a different war.
Yeah.
Than others.
Yeah.
So we had older, middle, and youngest. Since this is a podcast that has to do with caring for the geriatric population mostly, I want us to be mindful that we might have patients in any of those groups. We do get people that are a little younger than 60.
Oh, yeah.
Even though those are the youngest. So this is relevant.
Yeah, I'm on board.
So the combined disability rating, it's 0 to 100%. It's the extent of disability due to one or more service-connected conditions. The most common service-connected conditions were identified. The most common were tinnitus, hearing loss, asthma, sleep apnea, ischemic heart disease, genitourinary cancer, diabetes mellitus, migraine, anxiety, PTSD, major depression, and conditions associated with Agent Orange exposure. Do you want me to go a little bit about Agent Orange?
I think this episode's going to be depressing enough, so maybe not.
I'm going to say a little bit. So Agent Orange was used at the Vietnam War and era for warfare, and a lot of veterans that have served at this time as a result of exposure to Agent Orange either developed several types of leukemia, Hodgkin's lymphoma, ischemic heart disease, multiple myeloma, and other conditions. So results were reported separately for women and men.
Because sexism.
No, because it's important.
Well, okay. All right.
Because more likely women are not going to die from genitourinary cancer.
Oh, all right.
So out of the over 600,000 people, 62% were in the oldest age category.
Makes sense.
34% were in the middle group, and only 4% were in the youngest one. Overall age of death was 75 plus minus 13.
With life expectancy? Or life expectancy is like 79 or 80 nowadays? So a little less than average?
Yeah, a little less than average. And only 1.6 out of them were women. And among women, 35% were in the youngest age group.
Wait, so the women... Fewer of them died, but most of the ones, or many of the ones that died, were in the younger group?
Yes, because it was not that common for women to join the army.
That makes sense. Okay.
At the older eras.
Got it. That makes sense to me.
While among men, only 4% were in the youngest age category, and age of death for women was 65, which was 11 years younger. Again, that's the average.
Yeah, but
nearly 60% served in the U.S. Army, not quite 30% served either in the U.S. Air Force or Navy, and well over half, which is 61% of the deceased, had a disability rating of more than 50%.
Oh my goodness.
More than 50% for the middle group. 54 had a disability rating of 100.
What? Oh my gosh.
And in the oldest age group of men, only 30% had a disability rating of 100. But it makes sense because it's kind of like it's the surviving people. It's the people that did not die at 50. It's the people that have a disability, but they're still good enough to live with it.
Got it.
The most common disabilities were tinnitus, auditory conditions, and PTSD. About 28% of the deceased had some type of mental illness condition related to their service, either PTSD, anxiety, depression.
Dang.
Yeah. And almost 80% of those with service-connected anxiety were men born before 1939.
What? Wait.
So
stigma from mental health prevents them from reporting, and they reported?
Exactly. Usually with mental health, we think, oh, older people get more depression and less anxiety. Anxiety is more a young people thing. And it is not.
No, wow, that's really interesting.
I thought so too.
How fun, anxiety. That just makes me think about, if those are the numbers that were reported by that population, I assume that the actual prevalence of it was higher, which is insane. More than 80%.
Yeah.
Wow. It makes me look at that generation a little differently, I think.
It definitely gives you a different perspective.
Yeah.
For veterans of the Vietnam era, a little bit over 54,000 had a service-connected condition presumed to be related to Agent Orange exposure. And in that group, there were only 84 women.
I mean, not many women went to Vietnam.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying. A little bit about the cause of death by groups. So cause of death by group. The oldest birth year, usually nearly half of the death were due to cancer, cardiac, or cardiovascular conditions.
Sounds about like normal.
Death to external causes, including accident, suicide, or assault, were very few.
Okay, in the older.
Yeah, and I want you to remember that. I want you to focus for a second what happens to disease like cardiac, cancer, and cerebral vascular disease, which sometimes we associate with age.
Yeah.
And what happens to external causes, which is suicide, accident, and assault. So that's what's happening in the oldest birth year. They're dying more from the 3 C's, cancer, cardiac, and cerebral vascular conditions.
From 2004 to 2014. So this is just the people that lived that long. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Middle birth category, which is the people that are more associated with Vietnam, cardiovascular disease and cancer were responsible for most of the death, although the proportion of death due to external causes did increase.
I'm not surprised by that.
In the youngest,
which
is the post-Vietnam era, cardiovascular disease and cancer, they accounted for about a third of the deaths, and external causes accounted for nearly the same.
A third.
Like also about a third.
Yikes.
So it's about even what they die from. Which is, you assume that people that are younger wouldn't die from cardiovascular disease or cancer.
No, you wouldn't expect that.
So with respect to the disability rating, the proportion of death. So after that, they wanted to further understand the association between service-connected disability and cause of death, which is pretty interesting, I think. They came to 2 main subjects that derived from the further examination. One, it was apparent that certain medical conditions were associated with corresponding cause of death. For example, men with service-connected disability due to genitourinary cancer, 51 died of cancer.
Yeah, like that's not a shocker.
And for women and men with ischemic heart disease, 31 and 33 respectively had heart disease as the underlying cause of death.
Not surprised by that. But the rest of them, what happened to the rest of them?
They probably died from other things. And the second thing that's I'm really interested in, because I am interested in PTSD. Service-connected conditions due to PTSD or major depression had higher proportions of death due to external causes. In general, for all women, about 10% of death were due to external causes. If you go to the PTSD and major depression, it's more around the 20s.
Wow, nearly doubles.
Yes. For all men, 3.7 of death were due to external causes.
3.7%?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for men with PTSD was 5.9.
Also nearly another double jump.
Yeah. And overall, for veterans with service-connected PTSD or major depression, 6.5 of death were due to external causes, whereas those without these conditions, it was only 3.1. Also, it's notable for those with PTSD and major depression, we automatically think suicide, but many deaths due to alcoholic liver disease.
I'm not surprised by that.
In
or
that category, yeah. I am sorry, but I'm not sorry about talking about it because I think it is important to talk about it.
For sure. Especially on this Veterans Day episode.
Yeah, because, many people come and say, thank you for your service. And okay, that helps with the PTSD.
You know what my husband says? He says, thank you for your taxes.
That's cute. Anything you want to say before I go to the discussion?
I mean, I'm not really surprised by much of this, but it's nice that they put this together to have statistics about it so that we can have more concrete examples of what having depression can do to your risk of dying when you are specifically a veteran. Because being a veteran changes so much about you, like the way you think, the way you act, the people you associate with. It's just like they're their own cohort of people. I say it like I'm an outsider, but I'm a military wife now. So yeah, it's interesting.
And you grew up as a military kid.
I did, yeah. So like I'm a part of that. So I think military service might be something that we could ask about upon evaluation. Just asking if they were veterans or they are veterans. Sometimes I see that in charts and I make a note of that. So now I have even more reasons to look into that sort of thing. So thank you.
I usually, if I see on the chart that someone is a veteran, I say it in the interview, and usually they're very thankful for me saying it. Kind of have a little conversation about that and where they were, and I get wonderful stories from it. But especially, I am mindful that even people that did not have PTSD have some kind of trauma or issues relating to their Army service. So, for example, I don't use electricity without asking, or I offer it really gently because a lot of, I don't know if you know, a lot of soldiers that were under captivity were tortured with electricity.
Oh.
So for us, it's like,
know that. Thanks, Holly.
So for us, it's nothing. It's like, oh, we know it doesn't hurt. For people that have been through that, it's a little bit more. I do ask very gently before I use any external tools. For example, electricity, ice, water, heat, just in case it will tap on one of those traumas.
That's clever. That's actually a really good idea. I live in a very military town, and I just generally don't use modalities. But if I did, I should really ask about that.
Should we go to the discussion?
Let's go to the discussion.
Okay. Veterans in the youngest age group died prematurely at the age of 43.
On average?
In the youngest.
Yeah, okay.
Which is far short life of the expectancy for people that were born in 1960. For women, it's 73, and for men, the expectancy is 67. Also, as I said, in that group, third of the death were due to external causes such as accident, suicide, or assault.
Right.
And for all veterans, 3.8 of the death were due to external causes. So that group is more prone to those external causes. The thing is that veterans in this youngest group included service members who were deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, but also included people that had service during the Cold War. So you have people that served under very different conditions in the same group.
Yeah, that's true. Like if you're an infantry person versus a medic versus a mail clerk.
Veterans in the oldest group, I'm talking about those that were born before 1938, were healthy survivors. You know, if they got that old, their overall disability rating was lower. They had higher proportion of officers and a higher proportion of deaths due to cardiovascular and cerebral vascular disease, and very low proportion of external cause of death. And in the middle group, you get a lot more people with Agent Orange exposure, causes of both disability and death related to Agent Orange exposure. The conclusion that they came up with, and I'm going to read from the study, if that's okay. In conclusion, this study demonstrates that many deceased veterans with service-connected conditions had PTSD or major depression, and that this individual more often died from external causes, including suicide, accident, or assault. Given the increasing number of women serving in the military, a higher proportion of women were in group born after 1957. While the numbers in this group were small, the findings of premature death and high proportions of intentional or accidental death for women and men are very troubling and further emphasize the importance of the vast array of benefits and healthcare services provided by the VA.
Agreed. Preach it. Nice work, authors.
Really nice work. A lot of times people ignore the PTSD, especially we sometimes with people in the military say, oh, they're used to it. Or like,
they signed up for this.
Yeah, exactly. They signed up for this. That drives me crazy. They signed up for this is a very annoying sentence.
Good article.
Thank you. I hope it didn't depress you that much.
No, but I think that was a really nice article to choose for a Veterans Day type episode. But I think it was poignant. Like I said, I think it's something that we can implement, or it's information that we can take to the clinic tomorrow, especially if you live in a military place like me. When you're treating those veterans, it's important to ask things about their service and like any sort of medical comorbidities. And like Tali was saying with the modalities, being careful with that because you don't know the sorts of things people can do in those situations. So I thank you so much for this article, Tali. This is excellent.
You're welcome. I thought to myself, it might not have methods that we can use, but it is information that we should remember. Again, we have patients in every of those groups.
Yeah, especially I work in a SNF now, all of them.
All right. So for now, that's it. I hope you had a great Veterans Day and you are thankful for their service.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been the Senior Rehab Project SR Prereqs with Aaron and Tali.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening to Senior Rehab Project. If you've gained from this episode, consider supporting our work. You can become a patron. You can become a patron through a service that allows people like you to support people like us. You can give as little as $1 a month or become a game changer for $8.99 a month, where you'll get an awesome redefined old map and access to our monthly meetups. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com to learn more and find the show notes for this episode. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.